Welcome to Zero's Game Room, where all things gaming takes place. Interviews, discussions, and the latest gaming news. So take a seat, get comfortable, adjust your headset, because it's game time. Here's your host, Zero.
Can you hear it? Oh man, the legendary theme. That can only mean one thing. It is time for Zelda, the Legend of Zelda. I am Zero. Welcome to Zero's Game Room, the podcast where we talk about all things gaming. And if you couldn't tell, I'm excited. Why? Because we're talking about the Legend of Zelda. I have my Zelda t-shirt on. I have my Zelda glass next to me. I have my keychain of Legend of Zelda. I have Zelda socks on. I am excited, and I could not even be even more excited because with me today I have a very special guest. He is a huge collector of Zelda. He's been through it all. I would consider him to be the #1 Zelda fanatic. It is CowsCrazy. Welcome to Zero's Game Room.
Great to be here. Moo, everybody.
Yeah, so Legend of Zelda. How much do you love Zelda?
I love Zelda more than anything in the entire world. I'd marry Zelda if I could.
She is a very beautiful princess.
She's a very beautiful princess.
Now here's the thing. Do you have the Nintendo Switch?
I do.
So,
I am an owner of the Nintendo Switch.
So I would only assume that you have Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
That is the main reason I've purchased a Nintendo Switch.
Okay. So, I've heard a lot of great things, but I want to hear your perspective. What do you think of Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild?
It is the greatest Zelda game. Maybe the greatest game of all time.
Now, why would you say that?
It is just so expansive. They have thought of everything in this game. It's so open the world. You can do whatever you want, and things make sense too. It's a very logical game. I would say, and that's very important. I think in some video games is to stay true to some principles. They have heat and cold and raining, and there's just so many little things that they like as a video game. You know by playing video games yourself that lots of games aren't really, logical.
Right, there's some things that don't make sense. There's a bunch of
They don't make
series.
sense, or not even that. It's just like, how do I put it? They don't put in the little things in games. Like, if something wasn't in a game and it wasn't there, you might not think about it. But this game has things like where if it rains and you're in a grassy area, it will like pool up with water in the grass like it does in real life. And then when the sun comes out, the water dries up. As
opposed to other games, like rain is continually falling, but you don't see changes to your environment necessarily. Because that's how the game was created.
And nobody thinks about that stuff, and nobody would blame them or nobody would ever complain that it's not there. Like, if they didn't do that, no one would be like, oh no, why isn't the rain pooling and stuff like that. Nobody would ever think of that.
Right, so you're a man who looks very deeply into the details, I'd say.
Yes, there's so many things. Even now, weeks after this game has come out, people are still finding little things to this game that it's amazing that they're actually even in this game. That they took the time to think of this stuff.
Wow, yeah.
It's fascinating to me.
Oh wow. Well, yeah, I'm a huge Zelda fan. Not as big as you. You've got like mugs, posters. You've got everything Zelda, right?
I'm drinking out of my Zelda mug right now. A good brew.
Nice. Very nice. Now, Breath of the Wild, a lot of people have given it praises. Now, here's the thing. Can you think of anything of why this game would be imperfect or just a flaw maybe that this game has?
This game has no flaws, and that is its flaw.
How so? Okay, that's an interesting perspective. Why would you say that if this game has no imperfections, that itself is its imperfection?
Because you will not blame this game for being imperfect. the problem they will have is moving forward in the future. Where do they go from here? How do they top this game in the future? I just feel like anything they do from this point on will either be critics. I won't complain, but critics will say, it's the same as Breath of the Wild.
And anything else after this won't meet the time and quality that was put into Breath of the Wild. Again, going back to the little details, it's either going to be, it'll feel like a watered down version of Breath of the Wild, or it just won't meet the standards that Breath of the Wild has now set.
Well, all you could do is probably match it. How you could exceed it is beyond my imagination.
Yeah.
If they exceed this game, that would I don't know. I don't even know how you
That would
do
probably knock your socks off.
my socks are already knocked off, so I don't know what more is left to knock off.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's. We'll see what the future holds for
The future
Zelda.
is the key. Yes.
Now, granted, Zelda has gone through massive amounts of changes. Let's go all the way back to the original Legend of Zelda. What's your first memory
Well, that's
with the
thing.
first one?
See, I wouldn't say it's gone through massive changes. I think it's come full circle.
How so?
Breath of the Wild is gigantically compared to the first game. It's not like the first game has all this mechanics and has all this detail,
Right.
but in the sense of that it's the basic core principles of the game of just exploring and finding and not telling you what to do and having no idea how to play the game and just learning as you go along, and the need to share information with your friends. Maybe back then it wasn't on the internet.
Right.
It was going to school and talking about, oh my god, I found this under a tree or blah blah blah, and then you would help your friends that way. Now
Right.
it's the internet sharing all this information. But it definitely has come full circle from the first game to this game. I would say if this was if they were remaking the first game now, this would be it. This is what they would, if they had all the technology now back in 1986 or 85, depending if you were in Japan.
Right.
Then this is what they would have made as their first game if they had today's technology back
Right. Because, remember, it was back with the original Legend of Zelda. You were just kind of thrown into a world. You don't really know what's going on, and you have to figure it out.
The game starts and they tell you nothing. Even if you go in the cave that's right in front of you, he says it's dangerous to go alone. Take this and you get your sword.
Very famous words. Very
Yes.
famous words.
Very famous words. You get your sword, but he doesn't say to go where. He just says it's dangerous to go alone.
Take this,
So,
and he gives
take
you your
this.
first wooden sword of all things.
He doesn't tell you where to go. He doesn't tell you, you should go up 3 or 4 screens and then turn left, and
Right.
that'll be your first dungeon.
So what you're
Doesn't tell you
saying...
that at all.
Oh, no, go ahead.
So I'm just saying, you could wander for hours in the first game and never find the first dungeon if you take a wrong turn.
Right. You're absolutely right. And then you'll get lost, and you'll end up in places that you're not supposed to, and you'll get your butt handed to you.
Exactly.
Oh.
Exactly.
So
and
what you're
this
saying...
feels very similar in Breath of the Wild. Is once you're set loose, you could end up anywhere.
So it's not linear by any sense of the means.
Not even close. Not even close.
Wow.
There are people online already posting that they have beat this game in less than an hour. But
I've seen stuff like that.
It takes skill to do so, and I am not that skilled in the video games. I need all the powers that I possess.
Yeah, but I've seen that people have beaten this game in an hour, and I couldn't believe it. That's how open world this game is.
Yes.
Now, compare that, and again, we'll try not to compare Breath of the Wild, because right now it's kind of seen as the holy grail of Zelda. But let's go through, the history, Legend of Zelda 2, A Legend of Link.
Well, that game is a game that is good for itself, but Zelda didn't know what it wanted to be back then. I guess they were trying to incorporate styles of the Final Fantasy type or whatever,
Right.
those kinds of games that were more popular in Japan at the time. I guess they were starting to become a little popular
Yeah,
here.
because during the time that A Legend of Link came out, RPGs were the hit in Japan, and so they tried to implement RPG aspects so you could cast magic, you could gain experience, and level up.
It was okay for its time, but I would prefer if they never did something like that again. Uh, it's just, I don't know. It was a side-scrolling game, which was very strange. It took away the top-down view that we had gotten used to in the first game. So yeah, it just didn't feel like the same. It was the same game, but it's not at the same time.
Right.
And this game was not as open world at all. It held your hand a lot. Not really by telling you where to go, but by limiting where you could go. You could only go so far without an item, and then you would need that item to progress farther.
Yeah, you're right. I see what you're saying. Now, as they progressed, I feel they went back, and this, in my opinion, is one of the better Zelda games, Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past.
This was previously my favorite Zelda game.
Right.
Maybe it's too soon. Maybe it's still too soon for me to declare that Breath of the Wild is my favorite Zelda game, just because it's still too new. Maybe I need to take a year or so and really think about it.
So,
But,
what would you think about A Legend of Zelda: Link Between Worlds released on the 3DS?
that was the perfect game to complement A Link to the Past. It brought out all those feelings of nostalgia and just everything you wanted from A Link to the Past you got again in this game. And I would say if A Link Between Worlds came out immediately after A Link to the Past, critics and all that would just go, oh no, it's the exact same game again, boring, boo, boo, boo. But because it's come out so many years later, it gives that nostalgic feel, and it's fun to return to that same world that we were in before. And they didn't change the map or anything. Very few details were changed, so it's fun to see all the people again and the same characters and stuff. So
Right,
that
now in
makes
the
it
updated
interesting.
graphics and everything. And
Exactly,
they had a couple of different mechanics, like the borrowing system, and the story changed a little bit. It had like a little
Well,
bit
the
of a
story
twist
is
ending.
very much deeper. It's a story that has come up in some fans' minds sometimes. Is they've always wondered if the world of Hyrule would be better off if the Triforce had never existed.
Right, and the
Because
Triforce is the key to all of this, to Zelda.
the Triforce is the symbol of the series. It is the triple triangles that are together, therefore tri.
Power,
and,
wisdom, and courage.
Exactly. And each of the three main recurring characters gets one of these Triforces, and is a part of them. Link being courage, Zelda being wisdom, and Ganon being power, and they are
Right.
forever linked together. So fans have
No pun
always
intended.
wondered-
Linked together.
yes, no pun intended, but fans have always wondered, the Triforce is the symbol, and it also is the power of Hyrule. It created Hyrule, it grants the power of Hyrule. It is like their god that they worship, sort of. Even though they have gods too, they have goddesses, actually.
Right.
But the Triforce is the main source of all their power, but it's also the main source of all their troubles, because
Yeah, it's the thing, because
this
Ganon
land-
wants the Triforce.
Ganon wants the Triforce
He wants
so
to have
badly.
all the pieces so he could rule over
He can
Hyrule.
rule, probably just not Hyrule. It would probably grant him. They have established there are other lands
Right.
past Hyrule.
Past
in-
Hyrule, and there's also like different links, different heroes of legend, and there's like timelines, which I
There
think
are-
there was a book, right? The Legend.
There are many different timelines, and the time splitting and time dimensions. And
Right, there's like a
space
timeline
and
where Link loses to Ganon and how that happens, and then there's one where he wins, and then
there are dreams. There's
Right.
all sorts of different splits and stuff into the game. And but this, back to A Link Between Worlds, I'm just saying the story is that another dimension,
right,
which is complicated to explain, but it's like a parallel universe,
Right.
had decided to destroy their Triforce
yeah,
to try to get rid of all people trying to attack their land all the time to get it. But because it's also the source of their power, their land was destroyed.
Exactly.
And ended up in turmoil.
So that's
it's
why they
kind of-
needed to steal the Triforce of the Light World.
Exactly. So basically, it's the lesson of that Hyrule really is in a no-win situation. They'll never ever probably be at peace, because they will either have no power or they will be under attack for their power.
Right. Wow. Talk about a lesson to learn in the lore of Zelda. Now, we
Yes.
could sit around here and talk about Zelda all day, but there's one last topic I want to hit on because it was so obscure, and I want to know how much you know, because you claim, I've been told you know all things Zelda. Do you know, and if you're listening to this, you might know about BS Zelda no Densetsu, which was only released in Japan during the Satellaview on the Super Famicom.
It was an attempt at an online game, I believe, very
Yes.
early on. BS does not stand for what you think.
Oh yeah,
it stands for.
no.
It does not stand for that. It is a Japanese word.
Right.
I don't know the translation, honestly.
Right.
But I do own this game on a cartridge.
You own
Um,
it.
I am an owner of this game. I do own
Wow.
it. It's a very strange game, as it does not... It feels like a Zelda game. It actually feels a lot like A Link to the Past. At least one of the versions does. There's another version that is also an NES version that feels
Of like the original.
different. Yes, but I think the main one that you're talking about is the one that is more well known, that is on the Super Nintendo version.
Right.
And I do own that one.
Wow.
And there's a timer in the game where different events
Mm-hmm.
happen at certain times.
Yeah.
And at least during an hour. It's like an hour cycle. And you have to figure out when these events happen over these different times. Because the game was
Exactly.
basically timed. And back when it was first out, it was basically a race to finish these games before competitive speed racing actually existed.
Right.
It maybe even gave birth to speed racing, and
Speed
so-
runs, yeah, I
yeah,
would say
yeah.
so. See,
it could have, because it basically challenged people to figure things out in a very quickly amount of time.
yeah. To my knowledge, from what I've researched and what I've done, basically this is what happened. So in Japan, they had the Super Famicom, which is our Super Nintendo.
Super
And
Nintendo, yes.
so they had this thing called Satellaview. And Satellaview was kind of this like, again, like you said, it was like an online gaming thing. There was a world hub. You could create your little character, and then you could download BS Zelda, but you had to play it at that certain time,
Yes.
which is
That
where the
is,
timer comes in.
obviously changed now that I own it on the cartridge. Is
Right.
just the speed running aspect of it is taken out. It's just more based on the game itself now and the timer. But back when it was actually live, yes, it was at a certain time of a certain day, and you had to play it.
You had to
at
play
that
it
moment.
at that time.
Yes, at that moment, at that time. So it was connected with the other players in the world. So
Right.
if you missed that time,
Well,
that would be it.
Tough luck for you. You had to
Tough
be there. You
luck.
had to know the times. And like it would
Exactly.
release it by map. So like I know on map 1 was released on like August 6th, 1995, and like the second half of it was released on December 30th, because again, it's about that limited time that you had to finish it. And there was even some voice acting, which is all lost now, but you have a cart of this.
I do.
Somebody was able to somehow salvage that gameplay, put it onto a cart.
Yes, they have put them onto a cart. It's not exactly easy to find, but
Right.
you can find them if you're willing to pay the money for
The
them.
money
And,
for it, yeah, because it's a
as a great
priceless
collector
gem.
of Zelda, the amount of money is no amount of money to me. Money is no object when it comes to Zelda for me.
Yeah, and that's why you're the big Zelda fan. See, this is why they pointed me in the right direction.
The direction for Zelda knowledge is always CowsCrazy.
Well, thank you so much, CowsCrazy, for taking time. I'm glad you were able to stay here for the whole 20 minutes. Maybe we can have some other time where we have you on and we talk more Zelda, but we'll see where that goes. How does that sound?
That sounds amazing. I'm always willing to talk more Zelda.
All right, well, thank you for coming on to Zero's Game Room. Well, that wraps up another episode of Zero's Game Room. Want to give a special thanks to my graphics designer at Trekit on Twitter and at David_Ritter for voicing my intro. Keep up to date with the podcast by liking it on Facebook at Zero's Gaming Room and on Twitter at Zero's Game Room. Until next time, GG with a definite re.